tradition of fair, fearless, and factual reporting. You're listening to Nationwide 90 FM. The time is
5 o'clock.
From the Nationwide News Network, comprehensive, incisive, tough. This is Nationwide at 5.
Good afternoon, I'm Andrew Cannon. Coming up in the news for this Saturday, March 29, 2025, Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness calls on voters to support politicians who have the capacity to deliver on their commitments. Attorney General Dr. Derek McCoy is satisfied with the Supreme Court's decision to lift injunction that blocked the government from making Portmore Jamaica's 15th parish. Chairman of the Housing Agency of Jamaica, HAJ, Norman Brown, says it will take cooperation between the government and local developers to meet the housing targets set by the Prime Minister. In news from the region, more persons are registered to vote in this year's general election in Trinidad and Tobago compared to 2020. On the international scene, Myanmar quake toll passes 1,600 as people dig for survivors with bare hands. While in sport, it's the final day of Champs 2025 as schools battle for top honors. The details after this.
If it's news, it's got to be Nationwide 90 FM.
You must use your vote to support politicians with the wherewithal to deliver. That was Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness's advice to those in attendance at a commissioning ceremony for a new water supply project in Mason Hall, St. Mary on Friday. The Prime Minister urged voters not to be fooled by politicians that make promises they are unable to keep.
The first thing that the enlightened voter should look for in a government is not the promise of the goodies. Any politician worth his salt can stand up on a stage and speak eloquently and promise you anything. And many of you have fallen for it. Either by saying, boy, I'm sound good, me I go change him vote. Boy, I'm promise me this, or boy, I'm saying I go do that. And then when it don't happen, kiss your teeth and say, politics can't do nothing. You have to know, as electors, recognize that you have to use your vote, your authority over the politicians in a different way. But you must use your vote to support the politicians that demonstrate the wherewithal to deliver.
Ground was broken for the project in July 2024 and it was undertaken by the National Water Commission and Rural Water Supply Limited. Up to 3,000 residents in the area are expected to benefit from the project. Prime Minister Holness says the government's ability to carry out projects of such magnitude is due to its management of the economy.
They tell you this, they say it to you in this way. Sure, you better talk about economy. Economy can't yam. Putting in your mind that somewhere there is some secret fund that the government has that they can just dip into and come and deliver. The secret fund that the government has dipped into many times is other people's money. Otherwise called more taxes. So you got tricked. And until we break this notion that somehow I can get all the roads fixed and everything you want and you can get it now without focusing on the economy. Let me tell you something. The only reason why you're going to have water in your house tonight is because we have the economy that produces the resources to be able to do this.
Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. Water Minister Matthew Samuda has announced a $100 million extension of the Mason Hall water system in St. Mary. This represents Phase 2 and is expected to commence at the beginning of the next financial year. Minister Samuda made the announcement at the Mason Hall Water Supply Commissioning Ceremony in St. Mary on Friday.
So we know we will not be able to take too long with Phase 2 and Phase 3. Phase 2 will commence at the beginning of the financial year with a further $100 million extension of the existing pipelines and some work on your lift stations to ensure that more members of Mason Hall and indeed, yes, Kidland, yes, we are ensuring that you are in Phase 2 with the $102 million extension to the Mason Hall system that will benefit over 1,500 additional residents on top of the 1,200 residents that will benefit from this first phase.
Phase 1 of the project will see over 1,000 residents gaining access to water. Minister Samuda indicated that the project represents the government's ongoing efforts to improve access to potable water in rural communities and directly addresses the long-standing water challenges faced by the residents of Mason Hall. The minister noted that the government has invested over $1 billion in small rural water systems over the last 18 months.
Over an 18-month period, your government, through rural water, would have invested over 1.3 billion Jamaican dollars into small rural water systems, into the extension of the utility footprint for persons who never had water before. And this is an extension of our total commitment. And what it says to me that you should give us the benefit of the doubt. You should give us the room to do the work that we have committed to doing. So in other places that have waited as long as Mason Hall, we're asking the citizens of Mason Hall, tell them we're coming. Because we've heard their cries and we will make the investment.
Matthew Samuda, Minister with responsibility for water. Meanwhile, Minister Samuda also announced a $138 million water system for Eden Park in St. Mary.
The Prime Minister has said to us that we're not going to leave water being an issue in 2030 in the way that we found it being an issue in 2016. It is why this year he has assigned us $10.1 billion through the National Water Commission to upgrade water systems right across the length and breadth of this country. But those numbers mean nothing if it don't put water in your pipe, if it don't put water in your shower. I'm here to advise citizens of Eden Park that we have completed the procurement. The matter is to go to Cabinet. It will enter contract in April and work will start on a $128 million system for the citizens of Eden Park in April.
Matthew Samuda, Minister with responsibility for water, making the announcement of the $138 million water system for Eden Park in St. Mary. Attorney General Dr. Derek McCoy has expressed satisfaction with the Supreme Court's decision to lift the injunction that previously blocked the government from making Portmore Jamaica's 15th parish. The court's decision was announced on Friday. A lawsuit was filed by the opposition PNP earlier this month to block Portmore from being declared a parish. Member of Parliament for South St. Catherine Fitz-Jackson and Mayor of Portmore Leon Thomas are named as claimants in the lawsuit. The PNP says the government's efforts were a breach of the constitutional process. Dr. McCoy says the court's ruling on Friday clearly sets out what the government would be doing with the passage of the Parishes Amendment Act. He says the plan is now to look forward to achieving the objectives of the legislation now that both parties are on the same page. Chairman of the Housing Agency of Jamaica, HAJ, Norman Brown, says it will take cooperation between the government and local developers to meet the housing targets set by Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness. Speaking at the opening ceremony for the Neutrum of Waterloo Apartments in St. Andrew this week, Prime Minister Holness expressed his desire for more low-income housing solutions to be made available for Jamaicans. Mahiri Stewart has that story.
The Prime Minister made known his desire for more low-income housing solutions to be made available to Jamaicans. He says the government plans to do this through more collaborations between government agencies and private developers. Speaking with Nationwide News on Friday, Mr. Brown says he believes this goal is achievable given the plans made by both government and private entities.
It's a matter of both. The government through its agencies, the National Housing Trust, I know they have been breaking ground right across the country. HAJ, we have about 5,000 housing starts ongoing across the country, as well as we have another 6,000 to 7,000 housing starts planned. We want to roll out at least 4,000 of those in this financial year. But it's going to take effort on all the stakeholders' parts. The private developers would be able to do some, as well as the housing trust. And I am also the chairman of the Urban Development Corporation. And so we will be going back into the housing market in a very serious way. We will be doing set up affordable housing units in Brayton, in St. Catherine. We're going into Hellshop. So there are different agencies now that are advancing their plans to start more housing construction, because the need is there.
The Prime Minister also called on local housing developers to keep the prices stable in light of the government's increase of NHT loan limits. Mr. Brown says many Jamaicans have been able to purchase homes thanks to the increased limits.
A lot of the units that we have sold in the Catching Estate scheme, those units are taken up by a lot of public servants, police officers, soldiers, teachers, nurses, civil servants, and the NHT in partnership with us have been able to give 100% financing to a lot of those folks. So just to to acquire the home and go in. In some cases, they find as low as $5,000. Once you're assigned the unit, you find $5,000 and then you move into your home and you start to pay a mortgage, which is most times in the 20s in terms of the monthly payment.
The Prime Minister also made mention of the high demand for housing in Jamaica. Mr. Brown says the applications made for some housing projects being overseen by the HAJ reflect the Prime Minister's claims.
One of our mandates is to influence the affordable housing market for lower to lower middle income persons. We have had varying degrees of success in both levels. Currently, we have joint venture projects with China Harbour in Bernard Lodge, that's over in the Spanish Town area, where we are doing 1,635 units of one bedrooms and also studio units. The applications that we have, it far outweighs the amount of units that we're able to produce at one time. So we are actually in the process of looking at other areas across Jamaica to do similar developments to try and see if we can remain within that bandwidth.
Mahiri Stewart for Nationwide News.
To news on from the region, Chief Elections Officer in Trinidad and Tobago, Fern Narcis, has revealed that 1,154,708 people are registered to vote for the 2025 general election on April 28, based on a preliminary electoral listing. This represents an increase of over 20,000 people, as a total of 1,134,135 people were registered to vote in the 2020 general election. As Elections and Boundaries Commission field officers continue to work to verify the data, including addresses over the next few weeks, Narcis said there seems to be a higher interest in voter registration this year when compared to previous years. On the international scene, the number of people known to have died following the devastating earthquake in Myanmar has risen to more than 1,600, with people in some areas telling the BBC they had been left to dig through rubble for their loved ones with their bare hands. An acute lack of equipment, patchy communication networks and wrecked roads and bridges were hampering the search for survivors. The quake had flattened much of Mandalay, the country's second largest city. There was applause when rescuers pulled a woman alive from the wreckage of a 12-story apartment block some 30 hours after it collapsed, but the Red Cross says more than 90 people may still be trapped there. In a nearby township, rescue workers found the bodies of 12 preschool children and a teacher under a building housing a kindergarten. And now to sports. Well, it's all about the final day of champs at the National Stadium. And based on the results coming in, we're seeing that Kingston College, they are out in front in the boys section. And Kingston College and Heidel, well, they are still leaders halfway in the final day of the 115th Issa Grace Kennedy and Boys and Girls Athletic Championships at the National Stadium. After 32 of the scheduled 42 finals, champions KC are out in front of the boys with 198 points. They are followed by Calabar, 172 points, and Jamaica College third on 136 points. On the girls' side, it's Heidel. Well, they continue to lead, and they have 208 points. Champions Edwin Allen, they are second on 191, and third Homewood, 181, after 32 of the 46 scheduled finals. So on the girls' side again, it's Heidel. They continue to lead with 208 points. Champions Edwin Allen, second on 191, and third Homewood Tech, 181, after 32 of the 46 scheduled finals. And of course, somebody across from the glass happy with those results. And now for a recap of the top stories making nationwide news at 5. Prime Minister Dr. Andrew Holness calls on voters to support politicians who have the capacity to deliver on their commitments. Attorney General Dr. Derek McCoy satisfied with Supreme Court's decision to lift injunction that blocked government from making Portmore Jamaica's 15th parish. Chairman of the Housing Agency of Jamaica, HAJ, Norman Brown, says it will take cooperation between the government and local developers to meet the housing targets set by the Prime Minister. You can find the news on our website at nationwideradiojm.com and on the Nationwide app available on Google Play and the App Store. News is next at 5 tomorrow afternoon, but stay tuned because coming up next we have Sports Nation Live with Wayne Walker and Alric Swaby.
Sharing the experience